community involvement. This is the important one. I want you guys to actually, I think I'm going to be able to give you about 10 minutes at the end of class today to kind of look into this. But we want to do a mock debate, and we're not going to do this, by the way, is a very bad debate topic, which is superior, open source, or proprietary. That's a bad statement of a debate, so we'll give a different statement. But this gives you kind of a format and some reading material on how to get, through these kinds of things. I don't know whether we'll do, we'll have a couple of you debate. We may have tables debate on Thursday, if I can figure out how to do that. But the idea is that we may do what's called a public forum debate instead of a Lincoln Douglas. But the idea is you have time periods to talk. So we'll start off with each side making a statement, affirmative and negative, both making a statement as to why they believe they are correct. And then we'll have you guys able to ask each other some questions, and then you summarize your critiques of the other guy's arguments. The other guy summarizes the critiques. The other guy critiques your critiques and then criticizes your stuff, and then you come back and critique his critiques. And that's essentially the format of the debate. And you can have like different minutes allocated to the rounds. I'm actually, I don't remember the actual minutes because I haven't had to do it this year, but I'm actually a debate judge for the high school circuit. I got roped into it when my oldest was a freshman. He asked me one day, "Hey, Dad, could you drive me to a debate tournament? And oh, by the way, since you're going to be there anyway, would you mind being a judge?" And I agreed. And it turns out that once you've said yes once, it becomes increasingly hard to say no. And if you say yes 5 times, you are qualified in New York State to be to judge state tournaments and everything. So I haven't had to do it this year. COVID has freed up my schedule significantly, but it's kind of a fun thing to do. So we'll just do a little bit of a debate. I'm not going to, this is, like I said, this is a really bad, a bad statement. We will change this a little bit, but we're not going to fill out any forms. We're just going to do oral. Here's going to be, I'll type into the chat our statement. Our statement is going to be to everyone on balance, code developed via open source methods is okay, this is still a little overly broad. On balance, code developed via open source methods is superior to code developed under closed or proprietary methods. On balance means there are pros and cons to each, but when you weigh the pros and cons, the open source software comes out on top. And the cool thing about this statement, the reason I decided to leave it kind of open like this, is you can tailor this, you can tweak this, so that the answer is obviously one or the other. Pro, by the way, will try to defend this. They'll say that this statement is true, and then con has the task of attacking the statement and trying to prove it false. So, just to kind of throw this out there, I left it way open. If Con wanted to focus on something like ability to make money, right, that might be something that is a reasonable argument against it. If Pro wanted to focus on software quality and safety, that may be a good place to focus on. And you have to be able to answer the other guy's contentions. So your contention is your statement of, like maybe Con would come back and say, software development requires influxes of capital. Closed source software is more readily commercialized and thus results in more money coming into software development, which results in more code development, which on balance outweighs any advantages that open source software provides. Right? That could be a contention, a statement of what you believe and how you're going to, what your roadmap is for trying to defeat that kind of statements from the other side. How you're going to show on balance open source software is not superior, right? So there are a lot of different moving parts here, a lot of different ways you guys can go. And I'm not sure about how to hold the debate in Nook. So, we may have to refine this. Maybe we'll ask different people for contentions or something like that. I think for the purposes of Friday, let's see, we have let's have groups 1 through 4, and you'll have to sit in the same relative position. So let's have groups 1 through 4 concentrate on 1 through 5 concentrate on the pro, right? You are to come up with arguments to defend the proposition that on balance open source software is superior to closed source software, and groups 6 through 9 are going to take the con. They're going to try to come up with arguments why open source software is not superior. By the way, you don't have to show that commercial software is superior. You just have to show that open source software is not superior. Like I said, hopefully we'll have about 10 minutes at the end of class for you guys to get started and maybe communicate among your groups, maybe devise some strategies. And then I think in lab we'll just kind of run this a little bit for a few minutes there. Any questions? I don't like this, not hearing you guys. That may actually bring me back to WebEx, just because at least then you guys can chime in and tell me stuff. Anyway, let's go back to our community. Building community. Just read how to build an open source community and essential tools for running a community-led project. Basically, what we need to remember is that we are not necessary. In general, open source communities, I've worked for companies that paid me to work on open source software. So that's kind of cool. But in general, what you're doing is you're enticing those companies or you're enticing individuals to actually want to participate in your community. And the reason is we can do this because everybody wants to be part of a community. It feels cool. It gives you, validation and support, and you feel like you're making a difference on something you care about. That's the pro side. From the code side, the bigger your community, the more people you have looking at it, and the more varied experience you have within your community. Right? If everybody's had CS1 and nothing else, your barrier there is low, although you still get the benefit of people with different outlooks and thoughts and ideas. But the real benefit to the community is when you get a lot of diverse people in the system, in diversity in terms of experiences, capabilities, how they want to use your program, just different things like that. What that means is that people are looking at your software in different ways. And when people are looking at your software in different ways, what happens is they see different things. People will capture more errors that you weren't aware of because you as a developer got used to executing your code so it doesn't crash. So it doesn't crash for you. So you don't see the same errors, or you've gotten rid of all the crashes on the paths that you use most often. Somebody else comes in and wants to use your software for something different, and all of a sudden your code starts get sections of your code that weren't executed before or weren't executed in conjunction with one another before start crashing because of issues that you didn't know about. So by building up a community, and it's a natural thing for people to want to join communities, what you can actually get is you get the ability to find more bugs, and having found more bugs, the different experiences that people bring to the table generally makes those bugs harder or easier to find. I think the saying is many eyes make shallow bugs. So we love communities, but our communities are going to be generally volunteer communities. If it's open source software, there may be somebody like Kitware who's paying you to work on your software. The Linux Foundation, it gets money to work on from corporations and such to fund development, EOSI, etc. But in general, what you need to do is you still need to entice people to actually work on the projects, and a lot of those people aren't going to be paid. If the burdens of the community become too bad, places, industries, businesses that used to work with you before may in fact start bowing out. So what we need to do is we need to make tools that help us manage and build our community, but the tools should facilitate and not dictate. So, that's one of the things I think I mentioned the Insight Journal before. That was a really heavy-handed tool, and it was kind of useful for a mature system, a mature community where everybody was being paid for it, but it was really onerous for somebody who was dabbling or for somebody who was contributing gratis to actually get their code included in the system. So you want to choose tools that facilitate the interaction and not dictate it. And you should have some basic tools. Everybody wants to go to a website when they find out about something, right? The first thing you do is you type into Google, atom.org or something like that for the Atom editor. You probably want a developer mailing list or a Slack channel or Discord channel, someplace where developers can discuss things, make sure they can coordinate. It doesn't have to be heavily moderated. You should keep it civil, but it doesn't have to be heavily moderated. It should be a place for people to get together and discuss. I've been in a lot of these communities, and it is rare that anybody has to be banned because good behavior is expected. And when the expectation and everybody there behaves civilly, and you don't want to be the one that comes in and kind of destroys that. And by the way, in a civil community, that's a good way to get yourself kicked out, because poisonous people are poisonous and they can actually ruin a community. If you have to listen to a flame war every time you make an observation, you're unlikely to make observations and you will generally pull out and fall away from the community. You need some way to do version control, because if everybody is developing, you need a way to bring everybody's code together in a way that allows you to back out mistakes and archive things and find, not lose people's changes as other people make adjustments to the code. And finally, you need an issue tracker. And these are kind of the basic kind of tools. And again, this can be a mailing list. It can be a Discord channel. It can be a IRC. This can be Git. It can be Mercurial. It can be CVS. It could be SVN. I suppose you could probably do it with versioning on file names or something, but that would be a really bad way to do it. And an issue tracker, this could be the Git issue tracker. It could be Bugzilla. It could be a Trello. There are 100 different ways of doing each of these, but this is a basic functionality. You need ways for all of these. And for the issue tracker in particular, you want this accessible not only to your developer group, but to your users, so that users can tell you when things go wrong and get it in the hands of a developer who may have experience in that specific area and be able to solve a bug easily that is not necessarily easy for the user to see or fix. You want to make, you don't want to have 100 different Discords, or a Discord and a Slack and a Mattermost all together, because you want people to be able to go to one place and get that communication need met. But having multiple ways for people to communicate is a definite bonus, right? You want to have, maybe a Discord and an archived mailing list, so that people can discuss informally in the Discord, but the mailing list is there so that you can archive answers and refer people back to them. Forums, again, that goes along with Slack or Discord, places where people can discuss things. If you can add, in a big enough system, if you can have people doing answers in Stack Overflow, whether they're associated with your community, directly with your community, or just people that know your community because they're users. And then you can kind of continue on and look at some of the other things that we discussed about as well, right? Blogs can bring attention to your system, particularly when you have new capabilities. Syndication, same thing. These are places where people who follow your community can go for high-level discussions of new and great things coming up. And don't be afraid to do microblogging or do a little social networking. Go to one of the Severino Center's meetups and kind of talk up your project, and get some buzz around it. When you reach your milestones, when you release your minimum viable product, announce it. Use the channels appropriately. And it goes on, right? As your systems get complicated, it might be useful to either do a screencast, which is kind of what we're doing here, to demonstrate the use of your system, or maybe directly do a video, right? Here's how you do Camtasia. Here's how you use Camtasia to. I've watched those to to edit your first video. Places like Kitware will actually do things like hold classes where they fly people in, or people fly in from across the country or internationally to come and take a 5-day course on using some of their advanced software. Version control systems in there again. I don't remember whether I had something else to say about that or whether I just duplicated it. And the final thing is management of intellectual property. When you're a single person contributing to your open source project, you own the intellectual property. As you get more and more contributors, management of intellectual property becomes a little bit more problematic. If you hold the copyright, you can change the license at any time. You can't remove rights that you gave somebody previously, but you can say, going forward, I'm going to release this under a different terms. That's if you own the copyright to all the code. As you start taking in different code from different people, you have to think about how you manage that. You can use something like a contributor license agreement, where if you want your group to have copyright and the ability to, for example, change from a GPL license to a MIT license, and we'll talk about what that means next week, or vice versa. Well, actually, vice versa is not really a problem, as we'll see when we look at the licenses. But if you want people to be able to, if you want to be able to at some time change that license with impunity, you need to hold the copyright, or at least hold copyright rights. So a contributor license agreement will typically say that I am giving, I as a contributor to this open source project retain my own copyright, but I also give you the right to use the code in whatever way you see fit. And if I have a contributor license agreement from you, then that means that I have the right to, despite the fact that when you submitted the code, you did it under the GPL, I have the right to re-release it under a different copyright if we've made that decision to change the community. On the other hand, if you want to protect against that, you let everybody hold their old copyright without any license agreement at all, and you require them, or you require them to release it under an appropriate open source license And once that's done, then you have the right to use that code via whatever open source license they've released it under. So typically, if you're a GPL3 group, everybody coming in has to release their code under a GPL as well, GPL3 as well. And then, if you have 1,000 contributors, in order to change that license of the main repository, you have to change all of the sub-licenses on all the little pieces that were put in, which is hard. It's been done, but it's hard. I think it was for GPL2, they needed to do it when they wanted to migrate from GPL2 to GPL3. Right? If you have to get agreement from all those people to do it, it means that you've essentially established the license as de facto unchangeable. Everybody holds a copyright to a little bit of it, and unless you're willing to rewrite that little bit of it for everybody who demurs from the change, you're pretty much stuck with that license. So the strategies with intellectual property management are kind of fun. If you want to retain the ability to change the license in the future, you might need a contributor license agreement. If you don't care about being able to change that in the future, or if you are philosophically opposed to anybody in the future being able to change that, then maybe you don't want a contributor license agreement, because that just makes it really difficult for anybody to come in and amass enough momentum to get everybody to agree to the license change. Anyway, a little bit of a divergence there. That's kind of from the community side. The community side is to lower the barriers, make it as easy as possible to contribute, and make it as interesting and useful for people, so that people are enticed to come in and contribute. On the other side, if you want to enter an open source environment, well, they need something from you too, right? So you should prepare to play to your strengths. I know that particularly with people at the start of their college careers, they're concerned, or the start of a new project, they're really concerned about, I don't know the technical details, or I'm joining this project so I learn the technical details. But particularly in ARCOS, and maybe to a lesser extent in this course, they're concerned that they're not going to be able to contribute enough code to show, to get their open source contributions at a decent level. But the issue is that you come in with some strengths. And, we've already talked about the fact that writing documentation is painful and almost nobody likes to do it. But if you're reading the documentation because you're new to the project, and you're trying to install the software because you're new to the project, and you're running into all sorts of issues, right? There's one of two things are going to happen. One, it's going to go smoothly and seamlessly, in which case you're up and running in a very short amount of time and you can proceed to the next step. The other thing is it's not easy. It's not error-free. It's prone to issues, and there's a lot of background that you have to read or understand first. So documenting that stuff while you're learning it, while you're actually going through and trying to install things, trying to read through the documentation and figure out what the code does, is a very good way to early on to get commits, to actually contribute to the open source community, because you are exposing things that the senior people haven't gone through in a decade, right? So you are exercising parts of the system that no one with commit rights has looked at for 10 years. So as you run into these problems, reporting issues and then hopefully fixing them or publishing even document trails on how you got through them is a wonderful way to make the next person's trip much more error-free. If you are proficient in more than one language, maybe you want to do a translator to internationalize some stuff. Software designers are not necessarily good website designers. They're two different disciplines. Same with GUIs. And if you're a communications person, if you actually like talking to people and you like writing blogs and things, those are all very valuable, non-technical, non-code, some of them are technical, non-code things to actually do in a project, particularly while you're getting started and trying to figure stuff out. So if you're strong in code, do code. Doesn't free you from the obligations of doing some kind of documentation, but it does open up that possibility as well. But the key is even if that's not your strong suit, even if you're just learning, maybe it will be your strong suit in a year, there are a lot of different ways where you can contribute. You should also estimate your time commitment and plan your forays into open source accordingly. If you pick a vital critical bug that the Linux kernel needs done in the next 3 days, and you can only put an hour a week in to the project, you're not going to get it done in time. Somebody else, they're either going to rely on you and then be irritated when you didn't perform, or somebody else is going to grab it and do it right out from underneath you. So make sure you estimate your time commitment so that you are choosing appropriate size chunks, particularly when you're getting started, so that you can get something done in a timely fashion that, without impacting the timeline of the project and with high quality. Check your employment contract. You don't have that issue here, but if you're working for another company, sometimes there's some issues with employment contracts. That's not as big as it used to be, but IBM used to say everything before they became open source friendly. Used to be everything that you say belongs to us. And show your enthusiasm. People like people who are enthused. They'll go out of their way to explain endlessly to people who actually are excited about their projects. Every community will have different ways of communicating and different tones in their communications. Understand that. Understand how they're governed. Do you have to, how do you submit something? How do you propose changes? If you want to get a change in, what's the process? Don't step on people's toes if you don't have to. People can be kind of brutal, and that's one thing to be careful of. Be nice when you communicate. I think we read a passage on that. But also be prepared for constructive criticism that may be overly harsh, more harsh than you expect, until you get to know the people and find out how they actually communicate. Yes, Torvalds is one of the people that I'm kind of talking about. People just, I used to understand the communications channels, so understand what communications channels are used for what. Don't ask a question in a blog that's better answered in a mailing list. For example, right, there are different forums for different types of questions, and learn about poisonous people who just, and I'm not referring to people who have a tone in their communications as much as, people who are negative, who are always ready to start a flame war, who respond inappropriately to minor provocations. Those are the types of people who can actually poison a channel. And if you're in a project and you have control of a project with poisonous people, sometimes you end up having to ban them. I used to work for a company, and I was kind of able to bridge both sides between the technical and the non-technical group. So I would spend a lot of time. I used to sit next to one of the communications people, one of the marketers, and I would spend a lot of time explaining to her that the harsh email message she just received from the engineer had, while it sounded really nasty, was not intended to be nasty, and was just this guy's written communication style as a second language, and as an engineer without a lot of social skills. And then I would show her the last 3 emails I had from him as well, as a way to kind of try to, what you're reading is not what you're reading as a person with a more person bent is not what he's writing as a person with a more machine, fact-based bent. He's not. There's no value judgment on you in what he is writing, and it's a really difficult thing. So keep that in mind when you're writing. There's no reason to make people feel bad, unless of course your line is Torvalds. And the bigger communities can get away with it a little more than the smaller communities because there's a lot of people who want to contribute to Linux. There are fewer people who want to contribute to, Yaks, although Yaks is pretty good. A lot of people want to contribute to Yaks, although Quacks is kind of helping remove that. All right. And if you don't tell anybody what you're working on, somebody else is going to pick it up and do it right out from underneath you. Always give credit, give more credit than you think is deserved, because that makes people feel good. And you at least need to meet the letter of any copyright requirements or licensing requirements. Give back. If you use open source code, contribute to it, at least contribute issues and error messages. And if you're running a project, and you should have seen this from one of the readings about the email client, if you no longer want to run, if you no longer want to have your job in the open source community, find a way to find an exit strategy that gets you out without destroying the project, and retire gracefully and let the next person take over. Don't retire and then continue to harp from the sidelines. Okay. You need to reach a certain size to be sustainable. What that size is varies, but you do need a decent. Don't retire and delete the repo. That's a good one. If you have a product, if you have a large market share, right, that's sustainable because you can get support, training, customizations. A lot of open source comes out of hardware companies that give out drivers so that people can freely use their code. Companies use open source components and then contribute back to them. And some companies even have like a dual license model. If you read Qt, for example, they use a dual license model where you have access to an open source version, but if you want to use it in specific ways, then you actually have to pay them for the proprietary license. And that only works if you hold enough of the copyright or if people have contributed under that copyright. There are a bunch of nonprofits. They support open source software. We're involved with, we've talked with them. They come to campus. We have a project in Arcos being proposed by the Linux Foundation right now. So there are good ways to get funding if you're doing something that's humanitarian or widely used. All right, I'm going to give you a few minutes. I guess I only given you 5 minutes. My apologies. I got sidetracked on a couple of things. Take the next 5 minutes to kind of look through the references, debate, argue for your case. You know which side you're going to be on. I'm not going to remember. So, don't everybody flip, but it's a soft division. We do need people on both sides, and there are good arguments on both sides. Take this time to kind of talk at your table and kind of figure stuff out. And I will, when we get to Thursday, we'll kind of take a few minutes to, at the beginning of lab, to kind of run through something. Again, I'm not exactly sure. Not exactly sure what, but we will run through something. Right, any questions? You guys know about raising your hand and stuff, so I can call on you and kind of bring you up. And there's all sorts of ways to interact with this, but we want to make sure that we